All right, trying this again. Hello, folks. Mind's Eye Visual Guitar Journey people. Welcome to the lesson today. I've got a lesson here that has been recorded 15 times already, and it takes an hour or almost 2 hours to explain everything the way I like to explain everything. And there's jamming involved too, and there's so many different aspects to this lesson. There's modulation, scales, matching scales with chords, learning that it's not really about scales. There's so much to learn here. I don't even know what to title the thing, but I'm going to show you something that we can deduce right from this pentatonic instead of feeling stuck in it. But this time around, I'm just going to try to hold back and skip over a lot of little cool things. And I'm going to leave it up to you guys to then engage more and ask more questions down below. So I'll miss probably some cool little nuances here that I wanted to say in the last lesson, but I'll try to skip those. All right, so we start with a pentatonic that everybody's feeling stuck in. I drew it as a big jumble here because that's kind of what it appears, especially what it sounds like when you start jamming in. If you just start trying to jam in the whole thing. I mean, it does make a lot of great solos. That's why it's there and popular. But it gives you this one-dimensional sound that is good for so long. Just great for minor blues rock. But for everything else, there seems to be so much more that most guitarists start feeling missing out on once they've gotten the handle on is the minor pentatonic. So this is what we're going to do today. We know about each individual box here. It's good to grace over them really quick here for today's lesson. This one is really important. I'd recommend upgrading to this one if you're only using this box for the most part. Upgrade to this one is first sonic upgrade you're playing. I'm going to try to teach this for beginners, even learning how to solo on guitar. This is going to be like a brain explosion of all advanced concepts, but it's like maybe easy to see as they can be made. So we've got these different pentatonic shapes. For a long time, I forgot about this one. I never used this one. This one I'd only use the bottom of, discounting everything available up here, which is a good place. So you just get familiar with each one of these individual shapes because they are great to be able to return to when you're, through everything I'm going to teach you today. But we're going to see how everything is like inside this pattern, and this pattern is underneath everything that you're playing anyway, so there's no real escaping the pentatonic box. So let's move on here, and we're gonna play some tricks with it, and gonna show you how to really turn this into a solo box that like you've never seen before. So the first thing to do actually is think about this. If we're going to solo on guitar, well, where are we going to solo? Like maybe we can make things a little simpler. Maybe there's some strings we can get rid of. We got 6 strings here, but think about during a guitar solo, you're mostly around, here, your favorite guitarists are doing something up here. It's a lot of the top 4 strings. And once we master those top 4 strings, we can then kind of reclaim whatever we had ignored from down here. It's not that hard to plug it in. It's a repeat of everything you already know. So actually, it's going to be really handy today to omit this. So we're going to do just that. And we get to this, our next page here. So now we look at this thing and we just kind of see a jumble of notes. How's this going to help us jam? And so we see, I'm trying to resist making the lesson longer. Like, when you go down, but I was remembering what I was saying in my other lessons about the lower notes. When you hear your favorite guitarist, when see what they're doing, you'll be able to get all of that. I don't know why I just tangent off of that. Sorry. We lost those, but we lost those anyways. We're going to just forget about those. The point was you can know all that. So we get this now. A lot of guitarists will say, before we get into this little part at the bottom here, hey, Mark, it's easier to do the top 4 strings, though, because then you don't have to mess with the G to B string shift there, that anomaly. We don't have to always factor that in. And then we can learn to play like a bass player, too. We can switch off to the bass if we need to by learning just the top four strings, and that's true too, but then you miss out on everything that's actually afforded by this anomaly here, which I'm going to show you later in the lesson, is actually going to be what causes something to be really easy to remember, and it's caused by this anomaly here, and no one ever tells you this, so it'll be pretty cool. So something to see coming up. But so what we're actually looking at here is now we've got this jumble of notes. There seems to be something right here with a real simple setup of 4 notes right here, right? So what if that's the actual center of things? So let's see about that here. And it turns out that what happens is it is the actual center of things. And we'll consider it like a mirror, because mirrors, when they reflect, they make something opposite, right? So we're going to show you how that's sort of happening here. So look closely. Each side of the center of this post is a mirror image, but it doesn't still look like that below. So we'll analyze what we need to see here in blue and green. And so since you're saying though, well, now I see 2 blue boxes and 1 green, it's still, what's going on here then. So we can see that this came from the original pattern. We do want to remember this area, but we can forget about it for now. But this shows you that this is a link. This links the entire fretboard, because this is all there is. There's the green shape, this post here, this shape, which is actually the identical shape as the green shape I'm going to show you in a second, and then the back to that post again. You would be an octave higher on the guitar. So we can get rid of this shape. Why? Because you notice it's the same color, because that's the exact same piece. It's the piece of this. It's the other end of this box. So we don't need to know that for what I'm going to show you right now. So we look at these shapes in blue and green. Well, here's an interesting correlation. And there's some interesting implications, harmonic implications to this. I said correlations down here, that come from what I'm going to show you here. But as a technical, if you rotated this, looks a lot like a random stuff to memorize here, but if you rotated this, it's a mirror image, or it's exact same pattern. So look how music is like a geometric, it has all these geometric patterns that are just flipped. Or it turns your guitar fretboard into this, music lines up as all these weird geometric shapes on your fretboard if you dig them out. So, pretty cool, right? That'll come up real handy in the lesson here, but we're going to take a tangent here before I get into this and all of this. There's some good stuff here, but let me take a tangent here. So what we have in here, we have the relative major and minor, which is really cool. And then we have some more symmetry here. As a matter of fact, I'll keep going with my pages here. So we get here, and so we start with these, this shape here. It's just upside down. But there's some things we can, handy dandy, cool things we can pull out of it. This whole thing creates a relative major and minor pair of chords, just the same way the pentatonic that we've just derived all this from, the same way the pentatonic is like the pentatonic can be A minor and C major, or E minor and G major, relative major and minor with each other in the like C major scale. The A minor is the relative minor. That's where these come from. They're relatives in that way. They'll always be relatives. And then you can even sonically hear it. You hear they're kind of complementary to each other. We have an E minor triad and a G major triad in the shape coming out right there. Something to know. Now, once again, the same image just rotated. So we have the pentatonic box right here, that one that I said earlier that I hardly ever use. And then the more handy-dandy one. If we take these two shapes, like we can see how this is actually the same thing. It's the same image, just rotated. If we take these two rotated images and we combine them, um, on the spine there, then we have the. I was just trying to think of a better way to have said that, but we get this. You can see the pattern back to the pentatonic pattern that we get. It's and that shape is actually just the inverse of the other shape, so it's kind of neat. That comes up in a little bit too. So to turn this more into a soloing strategy, we're going to backtrack a bit here. So how do we get to? Because we started talking about like four notes now we're going to be playing this like arpeggio shape. So if this came from pentatonic, though, pentatonic has five notes, only four of them are chord tones. Which one did we lose? It's really, really easy to know it, to know why we did it. This is what we need. This is what we need. If we're going to talk about losing a note, we need to know why we did it. We need to know which one it was and how we're going to make it memorable. So we can know which, whenever we're in any of one of these randomly shaped patterns, where that one avoid note is. And it's not an avoid note, it's actually a an intentional note. It's your first level intentional note. You'll see how, it's basically an odd man out from the chord. And so that gives it its intentional nature, so it doesn't become an avoid note, because you'll find that there's plenty of excellent and cool sounding places to use a four over a minor and perhaps even over your major. And so it's not an avoid note like you'll read about a lot, but in certain genres more than others. But it's actually you're a very intentional note. What you do is you're making then an inside statement, and it's your first like outside. It's your go-to note. So just we could go on for an hour about really explaining the aspects and dynamics of that, but you'll have to take it for what it is. So here in our pattern here, we'll use this easy pattern to know this. So we've got we can see our intervals here: root, flat third, fourth, fifth, flat seventh, root. That's the five intervals that we get from this pentatonic, and then we repeat here flat third and four for a very good reason. So with this example, let's make this simple box our example. We'll lose the notes on this part. It's a double up of this box down here anyway, so we can just forget those. Because we got everything we need right in here. We have the root, the flat third, the fourth, the fifth, and the seventh. And then it's a box of, we're trying to represent five notes, but there's a box of six here, so there must be a doubled up note. So first of all, what we want to consider here is since we can use the major intervals if we consider this a major pentatonic box, but for today, to make it easy, we're going to use minor pentatonic, and or we use the minor chord thinking. So we're the minor intervals. So the minor intervals: root, a flat third, it makes it a minor chord, a five to wrap up the triad there. Then we get the flat seven. Now, like we talked about up here, flatted seven always going along with the flatted third. And then we got this four in there in the pentatonic. So let's also see something about this four. Our chord has four notes, and this shape, this tic-tac-toe box here, has six notes. And is there a doubled up interval that also happens to be not a chord tone? Hey, look how the pentatonic is set up. It actually injects that extra note as a doubled up in the octave box there. So what that means is that we clearly know then at any time where that extra note is. And I'm going to show you how you know that. Because, so there it is there. The pentatonic box is actually only this box. The only thing you're seeing here on this whole fretboard is this box. However, you see many people see two big squares here. They see this big rectangle and the square, and they see how that will octave pattern itself. You can use the octave pathway on the guitar to replicate this shape, these two shapes. However, this shape is really just an inversion of this shape. If you look on the outside of each of these, if this is the inside of the box, look on the outside, there's you're hanging off the edge of the square. It's the same notes. It's just that you get what this creates is like an inside playground capturing two notes of the scale that are in there, of the 7-note regular parent scale, and then two outside notes. And then the same thing here, you would get some outside notes available within the shape. So that's a neat thing about the shape. But so you can I'm trying to read while I'm trying to explain at the same time, because sometimes what I am explaining on the top of my head here is a little different from where I was when I created this lesson. So you've got that basically one shape, and you know that it's always going to be there. When you play this shape here, it doesn't mean we're going to ignore the shape. But what it means is we're lucky that when we do play this shape, we don't have to worry about omitting the four, because this gives us all the four chord tones. So, for example, play the big shape. That's the E minor, all chord tones. Outside. Then outside. Someplace I'm going, coming back home. All right, so yeah, you divide up your like statements. For statements that will include the four, do something with the four or without it. And when you do that, it kind of makes it so that if you ever accidentally use it or kind of go on it, it sounds kind of, it can sound good. And then it trains you to like kind of not to stop kind of landing on it. Because I would land there a lot when I was just noodling over a scale I didn't know anything about. Just I knew where they were on the fretboard. And you would end up landing there and not knowing why your solo just kind of sounded like compared to the next guy's solo. That was why. So yeah, the note is in this position, and it can be used better as a step, and the geometry stays easy to see. So let's go back to our solo area. Yeah, so we talked about this, is what I was just saying. I should have moved down here when I was saying that. And then also the side product of knowing this is that you can learn, like, you like that note that you landed on, you can go, oh, hey, I like the flat third. Oh, I like to end on the 5. And so you can kind of hear what these, intervals sound like against the chord. And then that leads you to, being able to hear someone else's solo and going, oh, hey, I think he just played the flat third over that chord. And then I can see where he landed right there. They got in on the 5th or wrapped it up with the 5th, whatever the case may be. All right, so we'll get more into the geometry and find out what we can find here. So first of all, just more about, omitting that 4. So we've got these big shapes, and we're going to omit the 4, and that's going to make them look a little sparse. But I'm going to show you how to make them all really memorable. But first we got to know which ones are about to disappear. That 4, when we're looking at it with this new weird way that we're looking at it, it can seem kind of weird because I don't see that big tic-tac-toe shape anymore, so it doesn't kind of look. But there they are, and if you rotated the shapes, it's the exact same note disappearing in each shape. And it gives us this. And don't worry, this is actually very memorable. Let's now pull out some shapes here and get through these. We're on tablet sheet 10 and 4 more sheets to go after this, but we got some jamming to do too. So from the chord, we've got a stack of 2 identical chord tone boxes. We've got this stack here. So is just the way I think about things. It helped me, this is what I'm navigating now with just staying on the chord tones of a chord. And remember, I'm going to think about this bunch of playgrounds, this little navigation code, over major or minor chords. If I'm going to, play E minor, I'm going to play this. I'm going to play G major, I'm going to play this. Play A minor, I'm going to play this. Play C major, I'm going to play this. So same thing. I might not land on the A minor for the A for the C, but we get the point. Same chord tones. So this works for major and minor chords. Now a takeaway here is also that there's root in 5 and 3 and 7. It's always root in 5 and 1, and then the remaining 2 intervals, usually the 3rd or the 7th or the 3rd and the 6th, flatted or whatever is going to be in this box here. And so we just want to remember that there's this stack of notes, two of them, and they're always a flat third apart. All important stuff to know. Just tidbits to have in your mind. So what that creates then, also, anytime you're at one of these, see how we call these flags, like this is the flagpole, and these are the flags, one on each side. When I get out, or on these wings, when I get out on the wing here, I know that I'm anchored. I don't have to think about the next place to go, like as if there's a bunch of gray area on my guitar. I'm anchored into the next shape here that we're going to talk about here, and it's from these little wing shapes here. Now, get into these shapes. I kind of think about this like the ends of the corners of your chess game. On each side, you got that castle. It stands straight up, and it's got the little castle top. I don't know why I think about that. And then one is upside down. You see, it's just a mirror image of the other one. And you can get to this blue one either by taking a whole step, easy whole step off we'll call this the pole, the mirror, whatever we call it, the golden mirror, I don't know. We'll take a whole step off, take a whole step this way. You can get into each of the shapes. Or I could be thinking about, maybe I'm there in there soloing, and I want to drift away. I want to, navigate somewhere else. I'm going to be knowing that as soon as I hit that note, I'm in the other shape to navigate to. I'm hitting that note that I screwed something up there, but anyways, you get to the point. I try to do too much, but you get to the point there. We went from orange into blue, and then the intervals there. You see the weird symmetries everywhere. Root and 5, or 5 and root, but then root and 5. It's both root and 5 on the top for these shapes here, and then the 3rd and 7th are always in the other shapes. You get one of them gets the we'll call that like the power chord shape. And then the others. And also, these things make great chords too. So, for example, train coming down the line. That's the right one. I played the wrong one. I have a tendency to. Oh, that's why. All right. So, then another takeaway is to know that there's those two, the shapes split up there. The mirror shape splits into those two, and then this you have these two shapes here. It's all you have. The whole thing is made up. This whole structure of weird, memorize this and that, is all made up of these two basic parts. The two, and they're all a flat third apart. Root, flat second, flat third. So that's going to help us with our modulation when we come up to that in a couple of pages here. So I guess we'll just move on here. So now we've got, we're still just moving through this major and minor. And there's one more area here. You got this kind of area here that where if I was to play this here, I moved everything up to A. So now we're being between the mirrors, right? There's our train horn chord. Much more, way more than just playing that boring chord from up there, right? Way more interesting. But what about when we get to that area right in the middle of there before we get back to our green? Seems to be some empty space in there, so let's figure it all out. When we want to get to there's a pattern in here, super memorable, super cool. When we want to find it and get to it, remember there's no having to jump into a new river from an old river. We are connected, so our waterways always connect. That was neat. So in these castle shapes, it's always this outbound note here. And so that's going to kind of lead us into the a really cool, memorable place that I'm sure all the greats have been playing in for many years before I got here. Sounds like a Jerry area and all those greats. But anyways, we've got this area that's really cool to remember because it makes these three. The first thing to note is it makes these three, or these two shapes that it's like a D chord shape here, and then a reverse D chord shape here. And that, once again, which chords are those? It's a relative minor to the relative major. A minor, C major, A minor. So we get that. All right. So now, check this out. We got this really memorable arrow that points us back to the mirrors. And when we're playing our arrow shape here, and we want to navigate away, we don't have to think about a new area. Our finger, and I'm away. Because I knew that note was in the new shape. I was there. Once I'm here, I'm on one of the flags. So you have a whole new jamming area. But wait, there's more. We do want to know about our little stack of, like a little elevator here. A stack of these power chord shapes. That's in the middle of the arrows. So that would help us modulate, because that same shape, now notice this. Notice from the green, if behind it by a flat third, there's another power chord shape. It's the octave version of this blue shape here, the root and the 5, root 5, root 5. Flat third, flat 7, flat third, flat 5. So you go from the bottom of this stack here, we can go up, same power chord shape up, or same power chord shape down. Let me show you here. It's just something cool to know, and that could help you actually modulate. And if we want to add that 4 back in, now we can kind of know where it is even. We can see it. It's actually just on either side of the mirror post there. Here it's kind of like a new place, and then back to the... again. But anyways, or in the arrow shape here, I'm hoping now you can visualize some of these things. We can just keep them in gray and you can visualize them. Here we are in the arrow, and there's that 4. There's that 4 again. All right, so what is a 4 again? All right, so now let's do something, switch gears here, because we also want to know about dominant to kind of round up everything here. We also want to know about dominant and half diminished, because those two scale shapes are also, those are kind of arpeggios, are going to be like the other two common arpeggios coming from the major scale. So you're going to find places to want to know this stuff, which is going to come up in our jam session here. And so though there's a pattern to it, and this is coming from the major scale then more so than the pentatonic, so it doesn't make a pentatonic shape. So we know a whole new shape, but there's a whole bunch of memorable stuff about it. And then I'm going to show you how with one of those mirror image flips, you get both scales, dominant and diminished, in one. And what's the relationship? Well, a dominant chord in C, that's the 5, so we got a G7 chord. They want to pull to the 1, the C. So wherever you are, it's the note directly below, whatever note I pick on this top string, from E, resolve into A, and B is going to resolve to E, and so here I am a G, going to resolve to C. So we know that. Well, another one that wants to resolve to C is the 7th note of the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Kind of call that the leading tone there for that reason. So there you go. Like you can, because that you have an arpeggio over that, the chord that comes off of that tone, you can lead into the C again. You can use those as here, then there in your guitar solo to kind of make sense. Which is that's when you're playing the changes, and when that guitarist is making that sound you hear where you describe it, I don't know, it sounded like he was playing the changes, can you teach me? So this is what that would be about. So let's memorize some shapes. We've got this moonlander here. We got like the diamond with its 2 lander legs, or you can think about it as like a diamond within a big triangle here. Whatever way you do it, you got this. So I like to see this when I'm, it's going to be almost my always go-to with dominant, because you get all 4 chord tones in that. And remember this pattern: the root, the flat 7 on level here, and then up and down toward the floor you get 3, and toward the ceiling you get 5. And then linked up, so if you play that diamond, I'll play the legs too, because that kind of gives even though it's all the same intervals, it's like a go-to. If I want to break out of there, a lot of times I'll think about, going to a new shape, which is really easy. It's another diamond. It's just a larger diamond. So that's memorable. And the way to find it is really easy because there's nothing to find. If you've played the first shape, this is your link up note. You've already played the second shape, which is most common on this fretboard thing. I mean, it's so common that almost all scale patterns do that. So I just moved from there. Once I was playing the diamond enough, I moved into the next shape here with the link up note, and that gives me this shape here, which leaves one last shape. And as you can see, it's not easily linked to the pattern, because I have to kind of take a whole step out to get there. But that's pretty easy enough if I'm ever here. There's I can step into the root there. But another way to get there is to think about this from a couple other memorable things. From the top and bottom of the first diamond here, we'll go back to that shape. We've got this flat third interval, and then from the bottom you've got this flat third interval, or which would be the ceiling, the bottom of our diagram here. But anyway, so now just doing that got me playing that third, and then that got me into this shape right here. So that's an easy way to get there. You can also think about I didn't draw these in, but you can also think about that there is the potential for there to be like a little, there's even like a little diamond there. So which gets you 2 notes into the next shape here, which has another memorable triangle right there, like a D shape up on those strings. So all real cool stuff, easy to remember, right? Now what about that diminished shape though? That seems kind of strange. We went through all this, so how do they find that diminished shape? Well, what if, I mean, it's got totally different intervals, so it couldn't possibly use the same shape even if we rotated 180 degrees, just like we did with that piece of the other scale there. If we rotate the whole thing here, you've got the half diminished arpeggio. Whoever knew this was real? Like I saw it myself the other day. I started saying, if that diamond is there, what if I graphed it and I go, oh my God, that can't be real. So you have the exact same thing. Here's the lunar lander again, the diamond. Oh, sorry. So for the B chord of the trying to go from one to the other so you could hear it. But anyways, though the B. So if I want to get to my other shape here, I just got to think like I can think like I did, just the reverse. My diamond is down here, so we'll play it up here. Where else can I go? I can go down here with a diamond. Now I want to pause here and tell you something cool. Because the relationship here, that both of these want to resolve to the 1, if you were resolving to the 1 and the 5 chord was playing or this chord was playing, you can interchange both of these systems. And they have a different phraseology. So for example, if I'm in over the 5 chord, I can play on my 5 chord arpeggios that we just went over. Sorry. Listen to this one. This one. It's a whole story, a whole different phraseology. And then we could go to a call and response, a response. The kind of brighter, happier with the arpeggio notes from right inside the chord. That's a neighbor talking. It's pretty cool stuff right there. That's, you get so much mileage out of all this geometric stuff. So here's some other stuff here. So we've played, this shape. So now we're down to this shape, same shape as we learned over dominant, just this weird, different way that it is. So large diamond, then that wall shape, and I don't have to go anywhere. If I'm playing this note, I'm in. Just got to remember that. And what do we get? The Adventures of Gregory Peccary. We get some interesting chords. We get to this chord. We get to this chord. Lots of cool stuff. So, all that stuff. All right. So, Then, you know, when you look at the interval structures, you want to know those. Right here, you've got the same structure, and this is what's afforded by that G to B string shift. It allows, since this is going over the shift, the same pattern, instead of giving us the root and the major third for the what we got with the dominant chord, we get the root and the flat third for the diminished chord here. Flat 7 and flat 5. So pretty cool. Cool with that stuff. All right, so moving on there. Let's jam. Because that's what y'all are really here for. So here's the G7 chord. What I'm going to do is play kind of within the same. I'm going to do two things. This first one, I'm going to show you what you learned in this method today. We're going to play music that changes chords. Just a small loop, 8 bars of music, 2 bars for each chord. And in the first track or thing I made, backing track thing here, this first loop is just G7 going to A minor and C major. So there's 3 chords in there, but they're all from the same key. And we grouped the A minor and C major together because we can just play one shape for those, because we learned ahead it's one shape for major and minor. And then we're going to play the purple shape for the G7 chord, and the shared note is here. So we can maybe be on that shared note right while the transition happens. We can use that as a tool. We can just step from blue to purple anywhere we want to. I'll show you some of those different connectors if I play. Changing I can hear changing the way the vocal sounds. I wonder if the computer's locking up or not recording me properly. But anyways, so just to repeat that, we'll hear the changes, and maybe I can call them out the different ways I'm doing it. And then this will, at some point, I may just resort to just playing in scales, just playing the scale shape, just to get that kind of effect it gives. But if I just played in the scale shape and didn't think of these two, switching from one color to another over each different area, or one system to another, then I'm not going to sound necessarily like I'm really following the changes, and it'll catch up to me over time. So you mix these both, and you got like a greater tool bag for you to use during your solo. So it's going to be basically, when I'm in the blue, I'm thinking about this shape, my flags, maybe coming down this shape here, and then being back in this shape, yada yada. And then for the other shape here, I'm going to be in my my dominant pattern here, which is basically all coming from the C major scale. I know all that already. So, but that sounds kind of noodly. So let's get to work here. I will get over to the page I need to hit play, and we'll get that started right about like that. And I think we're good to go. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now something has gone on here. Something has changed. Because that wasn't as loud as it was before, but the volume went up on that one, but okay. Different than I thought, but oh well, we'll work with it. Now when we go from the C, when it returns to the G, it's a little bit jarring, but It's not too common of a switch. Going from the G back to the C is kind of more common. But anyways. Let me let some things reset here. My computer's not being very happy right now. But anyways, there was that. For some reason, the bass piano I put in there is malfunctioning and making a weird sound that just popped up on this lesson. Of course, to destroy it after I'm 3/4 of the way through. But anyways, I was using the borrowed note a lot there to ride on that through the change. But I'll do another one here where I just switch from one to the other. Try again. That was purple to blue. Bit, you're okay because all the notes are in the scale, but let's get back to where I was here. All right, so yeah, when I was during the transition, I'm on blue, just step one up. I was sorry for being off camera here. It was down on my high E string, so here I am. I can switch up to there and then be in this shape. But doing this will also work in between. I'll show you down here on the gray. So you can see down here, these are some accessory notes that sound good to... add that shenanigan sound into the 5. And so, you can see that's from the blue pattern here. But anyway, so there's how all that works. We got to move on here, but and it's just you sound more like you're catering to the changes. Like there's some more dynamic sense in just entering a big word in there. Dynamic, just more sense into your solo than just playing the scale. Here, I'll just noodle around the scale to wrap that mess up here. So why don't I do that? like it's playing better together. All the notes are friendlier with each other when you jam with intention there with the catering to the chords. But then it had a kind of cool way about it when you just noodled around. And if you can use your ear while you're noodling, then you can usually come up with something that'll work okay. But you can see there's definitely a something or other. It sounds. I think they work great with each other paired up. Some scale noodling and then jumping back into the chord sounds. And it sounds like, wow, where did this guy sounds really freeform sometimes, and then he sounds like really on point. How does this guy do that? All right, so there's that. Now let's modulate. We're getting really far out here. We're going to modulate. How are we going to do that in this lesson, right? How do you teach someone to modulate? Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to play. We're going to afford some little something that's happening within this key of C. Earlier, I told you that these shapes are happening in that major and minor sense, or the pattern that we use. That there's shapes in there that's made up of two shapes, and they're always a flat third apart. So that helps us modulate. That gives us the power to modulate. We're going to make it easy. We're going to play just basically the same kind of loop. I'm going to use a drum beat with chords. And there's going to be just two chords, a C major 7 going to an E flat major 7. So both the 1 chords. But this could work if you made it like if you use the 6 chord of the key of C or the 4 chord of the key of C and the 2 chord of the key of E flat. That could work too. It might sound even more hip, whatever. But this will work for this right now. So here's the chords. A C major 7 grip, standard grip. And then let's see how that sounds. And then we're going to use this first. I'm going to use this thing you're looking at here. That elevator shape you were talking about. So like the green is all useful for C. The purple is for E flat minor here. So I'll make give our little clean up our, make it a little more memorable there. And the 0 notes are interchangeable through the pattern. So I might use those as the same kind of combiner note to get me over the change. But I may not. I may just go step from green to purple or purple to green depending on the change. So let's hear that, and we'll hear this, and then I'll show you kind of the same thing, just a different shape, 2 different shapes to use. So let's hear that. I gotta go here and go 1, 2, 3, 4. In there? Oh no. Oh, those even sound terrible. all jammed through a modulation by knowing something simple like that, especially if the modulation is just simple like that. Now, there was one point, maybe I heard an off note. It's when I, played basically one of the other colors over the other pattern. They just don't work well because those are completely different keys. They do share some notes. That's why there's those shared notes in there, which you can use, which are cool. And then basically you can take them through the elevator. So in other words, I can migrate to over the green or the key of C. I can, what happened there? Over the C, I can maneuver to the purple zeros. So in other words, I could be, might move up. I can move the solo there, so I'm ready for the elevator, basically the up and down. So let me kind of, I'll walk you through that sonically here. So we'll try again here. We'll hit that and we'll hit so here. So I'm in purple. Green. I'm gonna get to purple early. See how smooth that is? Get up to purple. Take the elevator down. So I went down to the green on the wrong slide here. You notice this. Let me get to the right page so I can tell you guys. I slid my purple zeros down to the green zeros here, and those were not in key, so they didn't sound well prepared. But if I was, like when I'm in the over the purple, if I slide down to this green and play these notes as like the last two notes, then I'm ready to go right up, up and down here, the elevator style, to my other green pattern here, and then play this. And then when it's time to go back to purple, I can maneuver up to this one, so I can be ready to move up into that elevator shape and then play something that I know around that elevator shape, then be ready back there, kind of something. So yeah. Yeah, like for example, I could even play the, hold on a second here. Something other like that. But anyways, let me wrap this lesson up here because I'm sure the time is already an hour, 45 minutes, something like that. So we got to go wrap it up so it's not too long. Even a different technique there where I was playing the actually playing the arrow shapes, and then I was using. Let me fill that in here. Gives ourselves an arrow there, and if we put made that, and you can see that that arrow shape, which would be this note here. Um, I won't make it purple, but that gets us into our green area here, our other elevator. And then if I take, that one and I play the elevator that way, or the arrows that way, that arrow note gets us into our other elevator. And that's what I was doing. So I would be over the C, but I'd be somewhere there during the change. Now I'm playing in the arrow, but I'm thinking about being on that note right over the change. So, and we can do all that. So, all right. I think I'm gonna leave you with that. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. Maybe I explained it a little fast, which can be good for the comments below. Leave a comment about something that you had a question about. And hopefully you learned a whole bunch of amazing things about how your guitar has these flip-flop shapes and makes it easy to remember. You've got 4 main chord types to kind of cover, and you can do a whole lot of fun things, including playing the changes and modulating. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks again, Mind's Eye Visual Guitar Method. Until I think of something else, here's your lesson. I hope you enjoyed.